Welcome back to Kings of Columbus Sunday Sound Off on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Landis still in Bloomington, Indiana, where he watched Michigan and Indiana on Saturday. I am in my home after watching Ohio State Purdue in person. I'm going to slide a little bit. Here we go. Hey, center myself up. Was my first game this year seeing Ohio State in person. We have questions and comments from our tech subscribers, Bill, to sort of run through to help guide this discussion. I think there are four main topics the Texers were interested in. One is Jim Knowles and this defense kind of continuing to get their groove on, and the emergence of the Jack, at least for a series yesterday, being part of that, even if it wasn't that effective. People slipping and questions about the turf at Ohio Stadium. Will Howard and the deep ball, and there's a particular comparison I want to make about that. And then the number one thing is handle your business, boring good. This is what a team should look like in November. And I think especially on a weekend where Miami lost and Georgia lost and BYU needed a miracle to beat Utah, Purdue's not good. But folks are here for boring good, man. And that is just the Buckeyes being the Buckeyes on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, is Purdue the worst Power 5 team? Purdue's probably the worst Power 5 team.
Oh, boy.
Right?
We got to do that on KOTN.
Well, I'm just saying.
Is that where we are? That's close. Yeah, might be the case.
I think they probably are. I'm not saying that to take anything away from Ohio State, because it was a handle your business Saturday. It didn't maybe always feel like that at times, and I think that is almost entirely like a pace of play conversation, because there just weren't a lot of possessions in the first half. So you look at the halftime scoreboard, it was a 21-0, and maybe you're a little surprised by that. I know that I was, but Purdue and Ohio State are also two of the slowest playing teams in the country. So two of the slowest playing teams in the country got on the field and played a little deliberately. So that contributes to not a poorly played game, just like maybe the scoring didn't happen quite as frequently as people might have expected in this matchup. But Ohio State, I think, did in all three phases, maybe for the first time in a long time, did what it was supposed to do in a game like this. So no major issues for me on that.
And you did watch the whole game. How'd you watch it?
I watched the first half while sitting in my car on my computer, because I couldn't get my credential until 1:30. And then at halftime, I walked over, got my credential, and got up to the press box. And I missed like the first 3 minutes. I missed most of the opening drive for Ohio State in the second half, but otherwise I was able to see all of it.
Yeah, look at you. Professional ball observer. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
They just scored on 6 straight drives after a punt on the first drive. So punt on the first drive, 4-play, 8-yard touchdown drive created by the block punt for their first score. 13-play, 80-yard touchdown drive. 7-play, 59-yard touchdown drive. 13-play, 59-yard field goal drive to open the second half. 5-play, 76-yard touchdown drive. 6-play, 74-yard touchdown drive. Now we're into the fourth quarter, and they've been handling their business the whole time. I thought, well, this is what I felt. I talked about this. This is what I felt like. I covered Ohio State for, there's like a 6 or 7 year stretch there where the defining characteristic of the Buckeyes, this is mostly in the back half of the Tressel era where the rest of the Big Ten was terrible. And those Tressel teams were maybe not particularly flashy, but were quite productive. I miss the feeling of being boring good from Dan J. And I can appreciate the fact that people miss that, because that almost felt like a Tressel win to me, which is there's a special teams play. The defense gets a shutout. Maybe there's not high flying offensive performances all over the place, but they are methodically taking care of business. And I'll tell you what, man, they won a whole lot of games for a long time doing that against an overwhelmed opponent. And I do think it's not that fun. I mean, listen, for fans, winning is fun, but when you have 6 games in a row like this, which is what you felt like sometimes you had in, the middle stretches of 2008 or whatever, but after losing to Oregon, after playing a weird, funky, what's up with this team game against Nebraska, after playing an exciting game and a great win against Penn State, but fans have a knot in their stomach through much of that game. It was time for a break. And the fact that Ohio State was able to provide that, I think was reassuring. Here's one. This is exactly what you wanted to see this game. Tried some new looks on D, didn't work well, but tested against a safe opponent and still dominated, played cleaner, less mistakes. That's our guy, Steven. And again, I think we have to keep the context of the entire sport in consideration when we're talking about this, because I do think as the sport flattens out and everybody's a little bit better, maybe there is a greater appreciation for boring good and handling your business, even while acknowledging that Purdue's not very good. Austin said, Purdue just looks so bad at football. I think the Buckeyes look great today, but Purdue also just looked heavily outclassed on the Northwestern and just got to stay healthy for Indiana and Michigan. Got to finish strong. Thanks for all you guys do. So that matters.
Yeah, it matters. And I don't know that there wasn't really any point last year where Ohio State felt boring good, right? I think people were kind of always on edge a little bit throughout all of last season. And prior to that, there have been stretches where the team has looked like this. No, I think it's good. I think it's a welcome sort of like palate cleanser. I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it, because it's not like I don't think Ohio State's been playing poorly. But the last couple of weeks have been tension filled at times and a little angsty in others. And this, I had imagined, had to feel quite good to just watch your really good team go play a really bad team and kick the crap out of them.
Brian, it's Purdue. It's Purdue. It's Purdue. But is Ohio State starting to peak here in November? I'm buying all the stock available. How could you not be excited about the opportunity ahead for this team? We had a frickin' punt block. What do you think of that idea? I mean, if we were going to make a graph of the season, are we at right now? We are on an upward trend. Is that fair to say? We are ascending at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I would have started it last week. As I don't know the Nebraska game. I don't think what qualifies, at least not on offense. Maybe on defense.
Not to me.
On defense, I think you could say that it maybe did. But yeah, I think so. We've seen this before from Ohio State. Like it has found a groove in November a little bit, and sometimes the schedule allows you to do that. But I think the fact that they're playing much better, coupled with sort of not just resting on what was working in the first half of the season, but have actually been pretty intentional about changing up some things, that makes me feel a little bit different about it, maybe than I felt about some past November upswings. Like this one feels. I guess in the past, those have felt mostly born out of just Ohio State having a tremendous talent advantage, and certainly it had one on Saturday. But this feels like maybe it's more of them tweaking some like actual on-field things to put themselves in better position to be more competitive in November.
You and I talked about this a little bit on the Saturday night KOTN late night show. I really do. I'll say it again, just to be clear. I'm not a silver linings guy. Just in case people think that I might be the type of person who looks for the best in a bad situation. If you're just, you know what, I want to reiterate, that is not who I am. I look at a bad situation and I think this is bad. But you learn things. You learn things from all kinds of opportunities in life. And I do feel like the loss to Oregon, Ohio State has made some very reactive adjustments, clear adjustments. Ryan Day's talked about it, and you just kind of said you think you're seeing it. For instance, I think what Penn State losing to Ohio State, and then Penn State played a pretty good game, again, against a weaker opponent at home against Washington on Saturday. The reason I bring this up is because if I were Penn State, I would want to look at the way Ohio State has responded, not in the Nebraska game, but since then to the Oregon loss, and say, okay, they lost a close game against a really good team. We did too. Look where they are now. They're better. I want us to be that. And I can almost hear, I was going to do a James Franklin, and I'm not going to do it because it's a Sunday morning and I'm just not there. It's very hard for me when I have Kirby Smart and James Franklin like floating in my head. So I'm not going to do a James Franklin impersonation, but like I can almost hear him saying that you look at I almost think like Ohio State's like an example right now. This is what you do after a close loss to a bad team. You want to react in this way. And I don't think that was a guarantee. So am I overstating it because Purdue's bad, but they also did a lot of, I think, really good things against Penn State. And I do think Penn State is good. Am I overstating this? Am I seeing ghosts? Have they not changed as much? Because I think this is a real. If they win the national championship, the book starts with the post-game locker room at Oregon and Ryan Day gathering his coaches or whatever and saying, like, this is what we got to get better at. And they did. Right?
Yeah, no, I think both things are true. Like,
me overstating it first, that's where we start. Yeah, that's true, but also there's some facts. Yeah.
They have changed. I think they clearly have changed the way they operate, especially on defense, but even like the being really unhappy with special teams and then sort of just like going out and this week and like really focusing on it and then putting a result on the field, I don't think is something that Ohio State always would have done. Am I holding up a 45-0 win against the worst Power 4 team in the country as the shining example of that? Probably not. But I do think this performance is part of a larger sort of arc, in which I would definitely agree that Ohio State has changed itself on the fly more than I think it probably has at any other point in Ryan Day's tenure. I guess maybe in 2021 when they demoted Kerry Combs was a pretty drastic change, but this is obviously very different from that. So yeah, I think that part of it is real for sure. I just like you might get some pushback on like it's Purdue. Let's wait until they play.
Yeah.
Even like Northwestern I think is not a tremendous team, but is better than Purdue. So like if they show up about their business and have another very professional like win next week in Chicago, then that would be even a little more meaningful to me than this one was.
Rich, most complete game I have seen from the Buckeyes since 2021 Michigan State. That's when C.J. Stroud threw 6 touchdowns in the first half. Also, that's the last. That week was the last week of that era of Ohio State football. The Ohio State destroys Michigan. Whatever happens, the Buckeyes are going to handle business there. That's interesting to go back to that point because I think there's a very good football argument to be made for a decision by like an analysis like that by Rich, but there's also something emotional there, right? Mm-hmm. That was the last that you want to talk about a chart, a graph, and we're going to do peaks and valleys where Ohio State would have been after beating Michigan State, especially after that first half. CJ Stroud was the leader for the Heisman. Ohio State was on track, and everybody was just like waiting for a Georgia-Ohio State national championship game for that Ohio State offense to take on that Georgia defense. And then they went to Ann Arbor. And this fan base and program has been in a different spot ever since then. Mm-hmm. And so I almost like I think it might be subconscious by Rich because I think it's a good football analysis, but there's hope here, and it's not going to be. You can't get past that point until Ohio State gets on the field and beats Michigan. We understand that, but as you look a couple weeks out, I hadn't even really thought of that, but I'm super intrigued by that. Anyway, Rich keeps saying Rich didn't have that big caveat in the middle. I just decided to psychoanalyze Rich in the middle of like an 81-word text. He was like, "My God, Doug, it's not. Can you chill out a little bit? It's just ball talk, brother." The offense looked in sync. The defense looks multiple, and they got plays from special teams championship play. Did not say that I also emotionally am finally over 3 straight losses to Michigan. So anyway, like I think there's a lot there. So let's stay. Can we stay with the defensive conversation a little bit? Mm-hmm. So you're watching in your little Landis bubble. I'm sitting next to Austin Ward in the press box. Of course, I've been watching Ohio State, but I have not been at the games, and I have. When you're doing a lot of other things, just so people understand, like I really am KOTN focused at this point. Austin and Berm are Ohio State focused, and you have 2 jobs. That's fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, yeah.
You are me and them. So you are everything, everywhere, all at once. The sequel is going to be about you. And it's going to start with you sitting in the parking lot in Bloomington, Indiana, watching Ohio State on your laptop.
It got pretty hot in there at times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
Just
I was very
watching
jealous
ball.
of all the tailgaters having a great time, and I was just sitting in
Yeah.
my car watching a game on my computer.
You're like, could someone just hand me a pork tenderloin through the window, please? I'm a king of the North, and I just want to have a little fun. You love ball. That's the thing. It's like, you do love ball. If your choice was pork tenderloin or watching ball, I think you choose watching ball, right?
Yeah, I'm picking watching ball. Yeah.
But maybe not in your car while pork tenderloin smells are wafting in around you.
Right.
And you're eating a granola bar from the Fairfield Inn. It's like, oh, hit that continental breakfast pretty hard today. Got this extra little box of Fruit Loops. I love tailgating. So when it happened, Mitchell Melton, whatever series it was, like the third series or fourth series, when all of a sudden they have 3 down linemen and Mitchell Melton's floating around, I turned to Austin and I was like, have they done this? He is like, no, not like this. So that was from your Landis bubble perspective. That was the full Jack, right? Is that? And again, it was Caden McDonald on the nose, Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry on the edge on a 3-man front, and then Mitchell Melton floating in a Jack position. Are we characterizing this correctly? And by we, I mean me.
Yeah, I think it was mostly that. It was pretty streamlined, I think, into just sort of like one idea of what that Jack position could be. But even that was different than the little bit of the position we have seen with Jim Knowles here, which was when Jack Sawyer was doing it 2 years ago. Like, I don't remember Jack Sawyer like lining up as a stacked linebacker and then moving down to the line of scrimmage. He was kind of just like standing on the line of scrimmage, moving around a little bit. So this was different than that. But yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it was only Mitchell Melton only played 4 snaps. So to say it was like the full Jack,
they're embedded in my mind. I will never forget them.
I don't want to say that it was the full Jack experience, but it was certainly more of a Jack experience than we've had in the last 2 years, because we haven't seen any of it in the last 2 years.
And would you say it did not work?
Yes, but also like Cody Simon missed a tackle in the backfield. I think like CJ Hicks got it didn't work, but I don't know that it didn't work because like that idea is flawed. I think maybe it didn't work because guys just weren't tackling great on that particular drive. So I don't know. I'd also like to see what it looks like with Ohio State's starting defense on the field, because as you mentioned, it was Caden McDonald, Kenyatta Jackson, and Caden Curry. Like, what's it look like maybe when it's Tyleik Williams, JT Tuimoloau, and Jack Sawyer? So I don't know. I don't actually think we'll see it again this year. So because Ryan Day seemed to suggest it, like, oh yeah, Tyleik wasn't going to play, and we figured, oh, why not just throw an odd front out there and see what happens? It's like, well, as long as Tyleik plays, then they probably won't do it. So I was happy to see it. I thought it was more than anything else, more indication that Ryan Day is allowing Jim Knowles to just kind of cook a little bit and come up with some stuff, even if it was only for a drive.
So it's like Ryan Day says, Jim Knowles, you can cook. But then Larry Johnson was like, I am not giving you my best ingredients. It's like, can we get Jack and Jet? Nope. It's Kenyatta, Caden, and we're not. JT Tuimoloau was not getting near that front. I apologize. That is, Jack Sawyer is not playing. So they did. Just to repeat for folks, if you didn't like lock in on that, it was the third drive of the game. They put in the 3-man front and had Mitchell Melton floating, and this is what Purdue did off the bat. 5-yard pass, 9-yard run, 7-yard run, 11-yard run, 12-yard quarterback run, 15-yard pass, 11-yard pass, incomplete, 2-yard run, stopped, and then they tried a field goal from the 3-yard line and missed it. Freshman kicker missed a 21-yard field goal to keep the shutout, but they just marched right down the field. And so people kind of just like seeing it. And like people who have been part of this conversation, which I think anybody here is deep enough into Ohio State that you've been part of the Jack conversation since Jim Knowles got here. From our guy Jorn, season premiere of the Jack seemed to be a flop. Purdue exploited it seemingly every time the Buckeyes used the jack. Thoughts? This, I think, is maybe the most interesting interpretation of it, and I need you to answer it because I can't tell. Brad, do you think that the three-man front with the jack position is the Buckeye D gearing up and practicing for Indiana? Like, is that a look to throw off a machine?
I think if they thought that, they wouldn't have shown it against Purdue.
Okay.
So
you think they just would have hide it? Yeah. Okay.
I think if you have a thing that you think is a curveball that you're going to throw at a team that's a good team, you don't show it against Purdue.
Okay. And so maybe it's more, usually if you throw it, it's like, well, let's show it, maybe make them practice for it a little bit and then not use it.
And then don't do it. Yeah.
And then don't do it. I just, especially if it's going to be that personnel, it's just a very, they still don't have a perfect jack, right? There's some people asking if like this
I think Mitchell Melton's pretty good. Mitchell Melton is a former high school linebacker. Mitchell Melton's a former high school linebacker who played linebacker his first couple of years here and then moved down to defensive line. Like I actually think he is like the quintessential jack. Yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So why didn't it work? Why didn't would you agree with it didn't work?
It was 4 plays. No,
that's enough
I would
for me.
not.
I'm out. No.
Okay, but if Cody Simon like makes the tackle in the hole, everyone's like, "Oh man, the jack position's great." Like I it was a matter of execution, not a flaw in the scheme, in my opinion. Yes, in this game it didn't work. Like it wasn't success when that package was on the field. Purdue moved the ball too much. I don't know that it moved the ball too much because of that package of personnel on the field, or because guys just weren't playing very well in that particular moment. So like I actually like some of what I saw from a pressure standpoint with that look when Mitchell Melton was like picking aside and rushing from depth. It seemed like Purdue had a pretty hard time figuring out how to block him. But from a run game perspective, it just wasn't very clean. Yeah.
But you are opening up running lanes, right? Like you're creating gaps that linebackers then have to fill. And it is always one of these things. This is it's a primary conversation, especially in college sports, when you're dealing with people who have to go to class and have things going on and aren't millionaires who are doing nothing but practicing football every day. It's like, well, the scheme worked, you just didn't execute it. It's like, well, if you can't execute it, are you sure the scheme did work? Because
didn't they also have like, weren't the linebackers Cody Simon and CJ Hicks? It's like, how much more evidence do we need of CJ Hicks not being able to play linebacker? It's like they came up with this fun idea to do things and then sabotage themselves with the players they chose to put on the field when they did it, right? Maybe that was the point. Maybe that's just to get us to stop talking about it, although we haven't asked about it in a long time.
It's like, but who sabotaged it? Was the sabotage... Did Knowles sabotage his own thing? Or was Knowles like, all right, we're going to the jack. And then Larry Johnson sends his guys out and Knowles is up in the press box going, right? Lauren, Knowles is still part of the linebacker conversation. It just was very funny. Do you think there are things inherent to Sonny Styles, JT Tuimoloau, and Jack Sawyer that if you are going to do that look with the three-man front and the jack, that you would take them off the field because other guys with their set of skills are better designed to do it? There's actually a guy I want to have a conversation about in regards to a three-man front. But was there purpose in that? Or was it just weird that they put the backups in to do it? Half backups, at least.
I don't know. I would say no. I don't think there's anything inherent in those guys that would make them unable to do that.
Okay.
Because they're good run defenders first and foremost. So, and it's not like they're not small guys either. So, no, I don't think that. I think that CJ Hicks has not played a high leverage snap in like a month. So right. I just think that they practiced that look with those specific guys. And then those were the guys who went on the field to do it. It was like, yeah. I don't think it was anything more than that.
Okay. I forgot to say this from Tyler in the other conversation. That's how a team should look in November. On to the next one. I thought that was a good. I was like, where's my November note? So yeah, I was intriguing. I was confused a little bit. I was intrigued. I was trying to figure out what it meant, and maybe it means nothing. There are things that happen sometimes that they just happen. I love trying to figure out, and maybe people have noticed this. I search for meaning in everything. And sometimes there is no meaning. Sometimes you just do a thing and then you go on and it's like it never happened. It's possible that's what this was. Or maybe because again, are we going to go into next year? Actually, maybe we'll go to next year. Rena, can't wait for Sunday sound off with Doug losing his mind over the Jack Leo defense. I loved all the stuff they were trying on defense, the pressure, the schemes, the everything. It was like watching Jim Knowles dance moves out on the field. Do you think Knowles is in his bag? How good do you think Knowles is feeling? Is he smoking is that a 2-cigar Saturday for Jim Knowles, the way things are working right now?
Yeah, I think so. He said maybe he was asked about it, but he used the word comfort a lot when we talked to him on Tuesday with some of the stuff they're doing now. And the last 2 games prior to this one, a lot of what he's done that was like quote unquote old Oklahoma State stuff still had to come out of the 4-down lineman world. And then this was an instance of that not happening. So yeah, I think he's feeling pretty good about like the process of finding the right things to put out on the field and then how the players are delivering that.
Yeah. Jeremy, good win overall. Defense looks much better with the re-engineered schemes in place. Offensive line, still my biggest concern. Felt they look good, but not quite as dominant today, especially in the run game. Lack of depth. If injuries occur, very scary. But again, like that's starting off with fixing the D. Let's do one LJ. Rusty. So this is definitely Larry Johnson's last season, right? Ever since Oregon, it seems like Knowles finally has full control of the defense. Comment, Bill Landis?
I think that's true. Whether or not that means it's Larry's last season, I'm not sure. But the stuff they're doing with the front, the way they're calling things, I think it is pretty clear that Jim Knowles is controlling all 3 levels of the defense.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Eddrick Houston, and I'm going to say ball things that may or may not be right, but I want to run them by you. So obviously, Houston had a much bigger role than ever on Saturday. 27 snaps for him, according to PFF. 15 against the run, 11 pass rush, and 1 in coverage. Not a great grade. Some of that, he had like a penalty that people actually kind of liked a little bit because it showed a little bit of fire, and we'll talk about that. But what did you think of the way Eddrick Houston, as a true freshman 5-star, played?
I don't know that I had much issue with it. I like that he did play. I like that Ohio State has been open-minded with him the last couple of weeks and thought of him as a guy who could inject a little bit of life into the defensive line. He played 5 snaps against Nebraska, 6 snaps against Penn State, all at defensive tackle, and then obviously he started against Purdue. So I'd like to see more of him. I'd like to see what Eddrick Houston looks like as he continues to develop a little bit more of a rhythm as a 3 technique now that he's moved there from defensive end.
Zach, Eddrick is a dog. Fine with that penalty in that spot. Perfect learning opportunity. He is going to be a monster for us. So again, the penalty, right? It's the guy blocking him kind of like shoves his head in the turf a little bit and holds him down. And then like Eddrick Houston gets up and is like, I'm not standing for that and I'm going to push you. And may as well push people against Purdue. Like, right? I mean, you can't do that. But I think what you can do is like allow that anger to bubble up inside you and then use it on the next play. Use it on the field. Don't let it out. But like,
yeah,
the dog's in there. The dog's in there. You just have to figure out how to take it for a walk. So maybe like, it's like, does he have a dog? It's like, he has a dog. But the first time he took it out, he forgot to put it on a leash and the dog ran away. And maybe the dog like ate a goose. Right? There are geese all over the pond by my house. And sometimes I think maybe I would just like my dog to run and eat a goose. Like they just poop everywhere. So, but you can't have that. I know I could go to jail probably right now for saying that. I know geese are protected. I love geese. I want to make that clear. But it doesn't mean get rid of the dog. Ryan Day and Jim Knowles are just going to give him a leash, and then he's going to take that dog for a walk, Landis, for the next 3 years. And I think people are going to be very happy about it. So I actually I am there as well. You can't do that, but you kind of like the thing inside of you that makes you want to do that.
Yeah, you like a guy who plays with an edge. I get like my thing about it is I bet someone from Northwestern next week tries to goad Eddrick Houston into doing the same thing. So like he can't develop a reputation as a guy who's going to do that the second you mess with him a little bit, right?
Right.
Channel it the right way, but don't lose it. Just channel it differently, and I think he'll be fine.
Vinny, Eddrick Houston over Caden McDonald? ? So they're different. They play different positions, right?
Yeah, Caden McDonald has, I think, only played one technique, and Eddrick Houston is now playing 3 technique. You line up a little differently. I apologize if I say this wrong. A 3 technique is like outside shoulder of the guard, between the guard and the tackle, and 1 technique is between the guard and the center. Doesn't necessarily have to be different body types, but often is, at least the way that Ohio State has deployed them, and different job responsibilities, all that stuff. So yeah, it's like they don't quite play the same position.
Eddrick Houston's more like Draymond Jones. You've made that comparison a couple times already, right? And Caden McDonald's like more like Robert Landers, or like a guy who's gonna like be a bowling ball maybe and get right over the center. Caden McDonald's good right over the center, but when they go to that, when they went to a 3-man front, they put Caden McDonald like right on top of the center's head, and then spread that out. So let me. I'm gonna try to be careful here, right? But when you play a 3-man front, and then like when it would be listed somewhere, you're probably going to list 1 defensive tackle and 2 edges, right? At least like PFF's going to do that. Is that correct? Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
So usually then what you have in that situation is you have one of your edges who's really like a pass rush guy, who's an edge that you would think of in the current 4-3 Ohio State defense. It's a Chase Young, Bosa type of guy, go get the quarterback. But then your other edge guy really is like half an end, half a tackle, right? Because especially if that jack is floating or there's a linebacker that might end up outside of him, he at times is going to end up with a little more interior responsibilities. And maybe he's going to be a little bit of a guy who holds up more in the run game, maybe more of a Cam Hayward type, who was listed as a defensive end at Ohio State, but really was a very different player than Chase Young. Is that okay enough for a Sunday morning? The way I explain that?
So. Yeah.
Close enough, right?
Yeah.
Is Eddrick Houston potentially going to be the perfect kind of edge guy for a 3-man front with a floating jack? That if you have, for instance, like Kenyatta Jackson on one side and Eddrick Houston, maybe Caden Curry on the other, like either of those with a true maybe nose as the third guy, like that's a very good situation. And then a guy like CJ Hicks or, some maybe Kenyatta becomes a guy who can float a little bit. They didn't have Houston in that package, in that jack package, but to be developing a guy, and you and back in the day at Cleveland.com, do we remember what did we call the series? Like you and Ari and I did a whole series about defensive tackles that hinged upon defensive ends being turned into defensive tackles by Larry Johnson. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. No. No, I believe you. I don't remember talking about it a whole lot, but I don't remember doing
we did an actual series on it. But like we loved the idea. Like Adolphus Washington was a little bit like this too. We loved the idea of taking like long physical ends and turning them into tackles. And if that's the process they're undergoing with Eddrick Houston, but then he's going to wind up as sort of like a 3-4 edge guy, which is like half a tackle, a half an edge. Like I think it's potentially going to a very good spot.
Yeah, I think so too. You just want to know, like Eddrick Houston, body type wise, is going to be able to handle sort of guards and centers if you needed them to. And I think it's not rare. A lot of guys do it, but that's the ideal situation. Like you want to have the foot speed and the agility to match up with tackles, but the size and strength to play a little more interior. And like, that's why like Jack and JT, I think, can do that too. Which is why I think the last couple of weeks you see more instances of them kind of spiking inside against the run and forcing things to the outside. But as you project forward, then I think Eddrick Houston is definitely a guy like that. I think Jason Moore is potentially a guy like that. I don't know who else currently on the roster. Kenyatta Jackson is probably a guy like that. So yeah, they have the pieces to go to that if that's the direction the defense is headed.
Okay. I think we were all part of it. How Ohio State football finds and develops the defensive position as important as quarterback. We called it middlemen.
Oh, yeah.
We did a series on QB Quest the year before, which is about like recruiting quarterbacks and how most of them stay around home. Middlemen will go in depth on senior Adolphus Washington, who has played as well as any Buckeye this season, and delve into Ohio State's pursuit in recruiting of his potential successors. And it was all about the 3 technique.
All right.
Current Buckeyes like Donovan Munger, Michael Hill, and Draymond Jones are still in that tackle development process. The Buckeyes will never stop looking for who might be next. That is as critical as critical a position as there is. You never turn down a good defensive lineman, Urban Meyer said. The guy in charge of finding those guys for Ohio State is veteran defensive line coach Larry Johnson. In this Q&A, Johnson explains what it's like looking for and coaching these middlemen. Look at us. Just changing lives back in 2015. So anyway, we'll just rerun that. We'll just come on Wednesday and we'll do baseball lineups for Ohio State Northwestern, and then I will read a 9-year-old newspaper series aloud. It's like an audiobook of defensive tackles are important. But that's right. So like that's Adolphus Washington, Draymond Jones, Eddrick Houston. In conclusion, is where I am at least.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the same thought process. I don't remember, like Haskell Garrett was that guy too, but I think Haskell Garrett was sort of always a tackle. It's like high school and incredibly disruptive interior college pass rusher. That is the Draymond Jones, Adolphus Washington, Eddrick Houston plan.
Yeah. Remember those days, Landis? How about that? Look at us just doing series. What are we doing? Yeah. What a world. Now we don't have to write anymore. I don't have to write anymore. You still have to write. You love it when I say things like, we don't have to write anymore. And you're like, what are you talking about? You actually have 3 jobs. To be clear, I have 1. You have 3. You have my job. And then you have 2 other jobs on top of it. So,
yeah.
And a baby. Not a baby, but a young child who disrupts your sleep at times. So I just wanted to clarify on this. Daniel, Doug, you seem happy about today's performance. Do you think this is Ohio State really taking a step or just exploiting an inferior opponent? Maybe both. Surely they can go hand in hand. I do. I mean, obviously the inferior opponent thing is there, but I really did see it as a step. Maybe I swing too wildly, but I just was really disappointed in Ohio State's execution against Nebraska. And I am feeling really good about their execution after Purdue. So that is what it is, but I don't want to dismiss it just because Purdue's bad. So
I think it can be both.
Yeah. Let's do the search for inches real quick because we did a whole show on it a couple weeks ago after the Oregon game, right? Was that the bye week game or the bye week Sunday?
Yeah,
no,
that was
the Sunday sound off after Oregon. It was a Wednesday.
It was the Wednesday after Oregon. Yeah.
Okay. So I got super excited about Ryan Day seeming to me to say that they are in the process of searching for inches and checking the margins. And this particularly applied to special teams, but he talked about that the punt block, they put Caden Curry and Mitchell Melton out there instead of smaller guys on the edge because they thought they could get through the smaller punt protectors for Purdue and maybe get something. They identified it in film. They tried it. It worked. TreVeyon Henderson back to receive a kick was part of that. They're trying to use their best guys in situations to maybe jack up special teams a little bit. Caleb Downs is a punt returner, not on Saturday, but in previous weeks was part of that. And he mentioned Denzel Burke playing special teams as a guy who's now out there sometimes blocking the gunner, which is a way to get in that guy's way so that you have a chance to maybe pop a return a little bit more. It's not only a special teams conversation, but because a special teams thing happened, it kind of led us there. I was very enthused by that for Ohio State, that's the way they're going about things. Because, and again, I apologize. I know not everybody here listens to the Saturday show, so the post-game show on KOTN. So I don't want to not say things here that we said there. If you did already hear that, I apologize. But Dan Lanning, search for inches, the onside kick against Ohio State, steal a possession right there. I feel like Jim Harbaugh with the halfback passes and some of the things they did, right? Like I thought Harbaugh was into the search for inches. Kirby Smart, hey, there's our head coach calling a timeout, very involved with special teams right on the sideline, like constantly connected to every aspect of the game. I think you could see against Ohio State certain examples of that in the past couple of years. And I just was saying, like on that Wednesday show, I'm not sure what the Ohio State examples are. Mm-hmm. I feel like since the Oregon game, there have been some examples, and you can't have them if you're not prioritizing them. It doesn't mean they're always going to work, but this is one of these things. It's a little bit like dating, I think. It can be really difficult sometimes, I think, when you're out there. And I got lucky and I never really went through the dating pool. And like, honestly, thank goodness for me. But because I tricked my wife very early on, and then I was done. I was out. But like when you're out there, you don't have to have a 75% success rate of walking up to a person and talking to them. You just have to have one. Whether you go 1 for 10 or 1 for 20 or 1 for 100 or 1 for 1,000, it's about the one. So when Ohio State is searching for inches in the margins, fail constantly, because like the failing doesn't cost you anything, I think, Landis, when you're in the margins, because it's not about quadruple reverses, defensive linemen playing off, whatever. But it's just about like trying little things. And maybe that one, when it hits, is what gets you over the top in a tight game. So you at least have to search and you at least have to try. Mm-hmm. So it showed up to me because it worked. But then for Ryan Day to be talking about, well, actually, there's all these other examples of where we're at least trying. Maybe you didn't even notice it or know that we were trying it, but we are. And I was like, okay, this is something. That was maybe the thing that I took away the most from that game. Not just that it worked, but that they're going to keep trying in multiple facets.
Yeah, I think that there's like two sides of that conversation. One is like the trick play conversation, which is worth having because like you like to have change ups like that. But I think it is predominantly a special teams conversation that when you talk about really finding areas in the margins, because I think special teams is just all about what you put into it, right? Like there are a lot of teams that can be fine on special teams because they have talent, and honestly, like it feels like it's not really prioritized all that much across the sport. So it's like we're not very good at it, they're not very good at it, it's a wash, doesn't matter. If you're Ohio State and you have really talented players and you take the time to develop a really cohesive special teams plan and look for edges, that becomes really dangerous. That has been a frustration of mine. I think for a lot of people, it's like, why isn't this team better at special teams? Doesn't feel like you prioritize it in any way, try to weaponize it in any kind of way. And it definitely seems like they're more of that mindset now, and they put it on display against Purdue, which is it's exciting. I'm not trying to like downplay it or rain on parade here, but it's going to be difficult for me to really embrace that idea until I see them do it in a game of note. Because I would also say that there are no margins when you're playing Purdue. Like you're just out there having a good time, right? So good that you're thinking about it. Good that you're coming up with creative ideas. Good that you're executing it, no matter who you're playing against Purdue. Call me when you do it against Indiana, and then I'll or Michigan or in a playoff game or a Big Ten championship game, and then I'll believe that then I will believe that it is something real and not just like a one-off. You knew you had an advantage week against a really overmatched team.
But they did change something. Like that's part of it that I like too. Is like it wasn't just that they kept doing the same thing and then the same thing happened to work. It's like they made a change and the change led to it. I was trying to think. It's Denzel Ward blocking the punt against Penn State in 2017 and like turning the tide of that game. When Denzel Ward was one of your most talented, fastest guys, and you put him on the edge, and he wasn't like a full-time starter yet, but he was in the corner rotation. It's like, well, you didn't have to have him out there on special teams, but like that's a guy who can make a play. So like that, that's what we're talking about. That's a perfect example to me of like you have a guy, and again, it's like we've talked about. Tez Johnson is one of the most talented players in the North. Oregon has him return punts. And then it's like, okay, well, how come like putting TreVeyon Henderson back on kicks or Caleb Downs back on punts to me is an answer to something like that. So I just was super encouraged by that. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in the game that I was at on Saturday, the IU Michigan game. I just want to make sure I have my situations right here. So that's a 17-15 game very late in the fourth quarter. The stadium is like totally like ready to just, I don't know what the right word for it is. Like they were they were pretty uneasy with the way that game was going. And then Indiana got like a huge punt return that put them on a plus field. They kicked the field goal to make it 20-15. And like, not only was it advantageous for Indiana to put itself in better field position to get some points at the end of that game and make Michigan have to drive for a touchdown rather than a field goal to win the game, it also totally reignited the stadium, which was like very much kind of sitting on its hands waiting for Indiana to blow the game. And then I think it was Keyshawn Williams, who's not their normal punt returner, made I think like a 30-something yard punt return and like similar to the Denzel Ward play, like really just like flipped the energy in the stadium and flipped the flow of the game. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Okay. This is a little thing. This is like a little adjustment. They've been doing this though, but Clayton asked this. Maybe Bill will know this, but it seemed to me Ohio State was running a lot of motion/orbit motions. Was it more than usual? The orbit motion, fake handoff to Judkins, actual handoff to TreVeyon Henderson was some diabolical stuff. So they're talking. That was a touchdown. Is that what he's talking about? The touchdown.
That was Trey's touchdown. Yeah. That was. I think generally, yes, they are probably doing more pre-snap motion this year. I've not actually looked that up, but I think motion has been more involved with the run game this year. So the play that was referenced there was TreVeyon's touchdown. I think it was actually jet motion. It wasn't orbit motion. TreVeyon was lined up as a receiver, ran straight across the formation. He didn't, and we're on their center too. So like he didn't loop behind like a shotgun or a pistol formation. Earlier in the game, Quinshon Judkins did do that. He got a handoff and TreVeyon was supposed to block, and like the blocks were whiffed and they lost 8 yards on that play. But the TreVeyon touchdown was a similar idea with like dressed up a little bit differently. But yeah, that was new. That was definitely new. I don't think we've seen that before. I thought more than however either of those plays looked, the fact that both TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins were on the field together was pretty noteworthy because that might have been the first instance of that this year. If maybe it's happened another time or two before. We still have not seen. I'm waiting for the like split backfield. Will Howard's in the shotgun with both those guys on either side of them. This was the first one was like Quinshon Judkins in like a wing position with TreVeyon Henderson in the backfield, and then the second one where Trey scored was under center with Quinshon in the backfield, and TreVeyon like lined up at receiver. Like split out wide and then ran back across the formation. So it's technically still like I would still call that 2-back offense for sure, but maybe not quite not the same kind of 2-back offense we saw from Chip Kelly when he was at UCLA. But anyway, that's a long way of me saying like yes, that was like a wrinkle on top of it, on top of what we've seen from Ohio State's offense to this point. And I do think generally they have used more of those kind of looks this year.
Do you mentioned this with the Jack stuff that if you really thought they were going to use it when it mattered, they wouldn't have used it now. They wouldn't have shown it. Do you expect there are some things offensively, maybe particularly related to Judkins and Henderson together that they have not yet shown that they will show against Indiana, Michigan, Big Ten title game playoff?
Yes. We have seen some split back stuff, but that's usually been one of Judkins or Henderson with then Emeka Egbuka or Brandon Inniss. And I think you can do all those same things with Henderson and Judkins and perhaps even more because those guys are more natural ball carriers and bigger bodies in the backfield to block. So, yeah, I definitely think there's more with that particular personnel package that we've not seen yet.
Can I call a play? Do you want to call plays?
I love the call plays. Yeah.
Okay. How about split back TreVeyon and Quinshon, pull a guard to the right, fake toss right to Quinshon, and then run Trey to the left and run like a wheel route and then throw it to him?
Yeah, I like it. TreVeyon Henderson was the most involved in the passing game that he's been all year against Purdue. I think that's because Purdue plays a ton of man coverage, and there were times where TreVeyon Henderson was split out wide and Kydron Jenkins, who definitely cannot run with TreVeyon Henderson, was covering him. So maybe that's a game plan specific thing, but I also found that encouraging too, that TreVeyon was more targeted. I think he had 3 targets in this game.
You want to do a play real quick? You want to do a Judkins Henderson play? What's your play? Call play.
Oh, what's my play?
Yeah.
I just like triple option stuff. So I might go like, I like the like fake zone read into a speed option. So like you run like an inside zone read with let's say Judkins and Will Howard, and then Howard pulls the ball, and then he and TreVeyon Henderson together get on the edge, and then it turns into a speed option play. I like that.
I think BYU ran that like at a critical time on Saturday night, and it worked for like 17 yards to set them up for something. You can feel that because when that hits, especially if you've been running the ball well and everybody's in tight, and then you don't hand it on the inside run, and you can see the option pitches, right? And it's like, oh my God, this is going to go for 1,000 yards. There's nobody out there. You've sucked the entire defense in. Oh, I'm excited. Okay. And now I'm excited because we've laid it down. And now if and when it happens, we'll run this back and look Super Bowl smart.
That's right.
Whoever's play gets called sooner. Offensive line and defensive line. Do you think the offensive line built on their play from last week? This is Steve. And I thought, because what is building? I guess building might imply better. And I don't know if they were even better, but I think they were still exactly good enough. Is that building? I would consider that in this situation building.
I would consider that building. No sacks again, right? Is that right? Do I have that right?
And whatever they had, like Will Howard fell a couple times. They had one, I guess, that they got charged for. But Will Howard's like, we'll get to the slipping in a second. Will Howard's like, I'm falling down out there and like making the offensive line absorb sacks that aren't their fault. So I apologize to them. He said that in the postgame. But it wasn't like Will Howard was running for his life. Not even close, right?
Yeah, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack. 4.9 yards per carry is pretty good. Quinshon Judkins only 2.9. Yeah, I thought the offensive line was fine. I guess like Seth McLaughlin after the game was talking about how Purdue plays a bare front. It's a little difficult to block up sometimes. So like you really got to kind of grind it out a little bit. So there were times where I felt like that was happening, but I was mostly curious if now that there was like a game of film out there with the left side of the offensive line, if Purdue might just like overload and try to attack them and exploit some vulnerabilities. And I didn't think that happened. So I thought, was it a tremendous step forward? No, I wouldn't say that, but it wasn't a step backwards either.
Yeah. I think that is building right now. Like maybe they didn't start working on the second floor, but they kept working on the first floor.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Right.
Like keep working on the first floor, reinforce stuff like that. I thought that was good. And I thought, again, the touchdown pass to G. Scott that I asked G. Scott and Will Howard about, I thought it was more of a tight end delay that it was in the play. And G. Scott was kind of like, I kind of just sort of got caught up for a little bit. And it took me longer to pop open and get across than it should have. And Will Howard did say like, it felt like it was taking forever. And the actual first read on that play was, I think, a shot to Trey, not a shot to Trey, but to look at the running back first. And if that's not there, he said the tight end often pops open on that play. And he eventually did. But anyway, for that play to work, the left, because it's everything moved to the right. Will Howard slides to the right. G. Scott's coming off the right side and coming back to the left. The left side of the offensive line has to hold up in one-on-one matchups. And if you go back and watch that play, Donovan Jackson, Carson Hinsman, and Seth McLaughlin all hold up. It's not beautiful.
Yeah.
It's not perfect technique. It is not quintessential teaching tape of offensive line play. But you know what didn't happen? No Purdue guys got to Will Howard.
Yeah.
And they got a touchdown out of it. And that to me was emblematic of it. This is not line up and show me all your first round draft picks on the offensive line, but it worked. and I don't know, like the Nebraska game, the way the left tackle spot was playing, I don't know that would have worked. And at various times, the way at right guard, Tegra Shabola and Austin Sarabeld were playing earlier in the year, I don't know if that would have worked. And looking back at last year and some of the struggles Carson Hinsman had inside, I don't know if that would have worked, but it worked. Those 3 guys were good enough on that play. And that's when we're talking about building. That's building to me. So you can still get better, but it also led to a touchdown because Will Howard said those guys know they have to hold up to let that play develop. And they did. And they scored.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a long time too. No, I thought you're in a situation now where not every snap's going to be clean, right? Like you're going to have even the moments against Penn State where like Abdul Carter just smokes Donovan Jackson and sacks Will Howard a couple times. You almost have to live with it a little bit because of the situation that Ohio State has found itself in. But if you have an ability to counter that with a play like we just saw, or any of the plays against Penn State, Ohio State hit a bunch of long developing play action passes that asked the offensive line to do stuff like that, and some of that was like max protect. I realize you gotta help some guys too. It's all part of the conversation here. But I think there have been occasions where the individual offensive linemen have definitely stepped up in those situations, and I think the team, the coaching, the scheme, even Will Howard, who I think we talked before the Penn State game, was like one of the worst quarterbacks in the country against pressure and has been really good against pressure the last 2 weeks. He's taken a step forward. So it's on all of them. But I think the offensive line, even showing occasional abilities to hold up for plays like the one you just laid out, is pretty promising.
And if you don't believe they can, you don't call it. So
Exactly.
That's part of it too.
Yeah.
You have enough belief to try it. It's a good play call in that situation, and everybody did their job, and then it works. And it's like, okay, we can do this. Because I think one of the worst things that happens to an offense is something goes wrong, and then you can't even try those plays anymore. And now you're shrinking the play sheet in a way that can be really difficult. And I thought they were headed toward a shrunken play sheet after Nebraska, and now they're not again. So, because I think that's part of, again, that Nebraska game. What was so weird about it is the left tackle spot graded out much better in the run game than in the pass game. But they were getting so destroyed in pass protection that I think it forced Ohio State into some run things that then overall didn't really work because the pass protection wasn't working, because you're shrinking the play sheet. And there's just you can't live that way. You can't win a national championship that way. And that's not where they are anymore.
No.
Okay. Luke, you mentioned this about the running backs. Luke says, even though both running backs have been good this year, it felt like Quinshon was more successful, kind of the go-to guy if we needed yards the last couple weeks. But especially today, it seems like Trey was that guy, making big runs early to get our offense running. It's nice to see both running backs stepping up when needed, which again, that is, I think when you have a two-back system, it's a balance, but it's not equal in every game. And somebody's going to have a game where and like, that's kind of the whole point to this. So I would say, again, are they the number one rushing team in the country, which you thought they maybe had a chance to beat? No. But are they effectively balancing backs and giving teams different looks and almost always finding a way to do something in the run game? Yes. And a 1 week Quinshon, 1 week TreVeyon. Trey has a 2-game stretch. Quinshon has a 2-game stretch. That's how it should be, right?
Yeah, I think so. I thought TreVeyon had like incredible burst on Saturday. He just looked really fresh. And Quinshon, as I just mentioned, like was not super efficient, although anecdotally, without looking it up, it felt like maybe TreVeyon was hitting outside a little more, and maybe Quinshon was hitting inside a little more, and there was some tougher sledding there. But I think every running back encounters games where it's just like, well, this guy's just like a little off today, and like he's going to power through it, but it's going to be a real slog. And Ohio State just kind of has the ability now that if either one of those running backs finds himself in that position, you can just kind of toss the other one out there, and they'll more than likely ignite something a little different, because they do have, you can call all of the same stuff no matter which of them is in the game, but they also, I think, have different enough styles that if like one is not particularly effective, the other one stands a pretty good chance of being effective, because they can change up the feel of the run game a little bit.
And hasn't really happened yet this year, but it is so huge that if somebody gets abducted by aliens for 2 series in a super important game, you're okay. And that is, I mean, it's not even, of course that's part of it, but just the times J.K. Dobbins, right? Against Clemson in that semifinal. It's like J.K. Dobbins goes out, and like that's like Master Teague did have a huge carry there, but it's like, oh man, J.K. Dobbins is a 2,000-yard workhorse, but what if something happens to him? That's when you'd rather maybe have 2,000-yard workhorses than one 2,000-yard workhorse, because you double your chances of always having somebody you 1,000% believe in. And they've done a good job of balancing them, though I think keep them fresh. You're talking about Trey, looked like he had a burst in November. That's success right there to begin with. Yeah, but also 100%. They are continuing on this path of pair and a spare, man. Although it's not really the pair and a spare. It's a pair gives you a spare. Pair and a spare is a lot. That's what everybody like. Pair and a spare. That's 3. Just a pair. Just a pair is good.
Pear's
Do you
good.
eat pears,
Yeah.
by the way? Do you like pears? I am not a pear guy. I'm an apple guy.
I don't love the texture of a pear.
Yeah. I can never tell because my family likes pears. So if I'm at the grocery store trying to get pears, I don't know if they're supposed to be hard or soft, and I'm squeezing pears with no idea of what I'm doing. Last two things. People falling down. Mike, no complaints about the game other than the turf field. Game after game, we see players slipping. This is not happening in all the other games I watch. Why is the field so bad? This is TJ. I know we won big and overall played well, but could we possibly be the college team that slips the most in their own stadium? Are there cleats that could prevent our guys from slipping so much, especially the quarterback? Otherwise feeling good. Let's see. From the 615, the turf is a disadvantage for the Buckeyes at home. It needs to be replaced. I watch other college games and NFL games and don't see players consistently losing their footing when the ground is not wet. This is madness. Will Howard noticed it too. Anthony, I feel like Will Howard has been slipping all year. What's the root cause? Bad cleats, bad turf, bad agility? Others? Seems like Will needs to make a change either way with his foot gear because a slip in a tight margin may be costly. It's happening too much. So Will Howard said after the game, unprompted, by the way, don't worry, I'm getting new cleats. I'm tired of looking unathletic and falling down all the time. So it's interesting to like this, again, on the list of what are the three things that you're most worried about after Ohio State's convincing win over Purdue. Guys falling down is very high on the list. But the thing is, I'm not sure. It's not like there's a huge play in Ohio State history where like a guy slipped and it became a thing that people talked about for 30 years or anything. So like, what's the big deal? Guys slip sometimes. I'll let me go look to see if there's a guy slips issue for Ohio State. What do you think of this?
I think it's a huge issue. I think it's embarrassing for Ohio State, frankly, that it had maybe the worst looking turf in college football that also functionally wasn't very good that got replaced 2 years ago. And this isn't any better. And this is also the slit film turf that the NFL wants to get rid of, or maybe has gotten rid of, or is in the process of eliminating from its game because it's also like not safe. I think Ohio State needs to change it. I don't know all the specifics of whether or not you can have a natural playing surface in Ohio Stadium. I've not talked to anybody about it. I've not really looked into it all that much.
I mean, they used to have
it,
and then it rained, and they
field,
played in the mud, and then they were like, okay, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah. So I'm not saying automatically go to grass. There are other turf options. This is just bad. I think it looks bad. Like just aesthetically, I don't think it looks very good. And the playing surface clearly isn't what it should be. With it's not only Will Howard falling, there's guys falling every game on both teams. And I, to the texture's point, like I watch a lot of other college football games. I feel like I don't see that happen a whole lot at other places, and it seems to happen almost every single time I watch a game played in Ohio Stadium. And I don't know like who Gus and Joel were talking to, but they're trying to blame it on the band for like practicing on the field and tamping down. Like that to me sounds like a load of BS from someone at Ohio State that's trying to excuse away the fact that their turf sucks. They make a ton of money. The turf should be better, so replace it with something that works better. Like I don't. To me, it's as simple as that. I know that it's expensive. What's the money for?
What's the money for? It is on our Wednesday show. We talked a lot about like, Ohio State home playoff game, whatever. Can you imagine? Like that is. Like it's like the postseason. You want Ohio State to be able to maximize its talent and athleticism, but especially to have it be a problem in your own place. I was just kidding, obviously. Sean Springs slipped 1996. So like, it matters. It matters. And I'm not trying to put that out there, but like it's just it matters. And I do think we are officially at the point of it's probably worth a question to Ryan Day on Tuesday. And Ross Bjork's around. And so it is worth like tracking down Ross Bjork and asking about it because
he was at the press conference last week. Yeah, he was there. He was at the press conference on Tuesday, just kind of sitting in the back. We'll see if he's around again this week. I also don't know. Like I know Ross Bjork went on the radio station earlier this year and said like Mickey Marotti is their turf guru, whatever that means. I don't understand anything about turf. I know that I'm not a turf guru. Why your head strength trainer is your turf guru doesn't really compute in my brain. I don't care who the guru is or whose job it is. Like, it clearly needs to be better. So that's a question for Ryan Day, Ross Bjork, and I guess also Mickey Marotti, who got looped into this by Ross Bjork.
But I will say, as someone who has fallen down a fair amount of times in my life, I am a falling down expert. Not cool.
I will say, so when I was in 8th grade, I was playing CYO football. We played a veteran stadium on the old vet stadium turf that like looked like a pool table. And I remember me at like 11 or 12 years old, however old I was, thinking like, I cannot believe they play professional football on this surface. And then the kid on the other team we played got really injured, like had to get carted off the field because we were basically playing on concrete. Yeah.
No, I remember like there was like a Giants receiver, I think, who went up to catch a pass and landed on that turf, and both of his ACLs simultaneously exploded because it might as well have been painted green concrete. So we have progressed past this, but this is not the first time this conversation has come up about the Ohio Stadium turf, because as you said, this is an NFL issue. The NFL, right, which what you were saying is has moved away from this style of turf. I just honestly think grass is not the answer. Like it would be nice. There's just not a ton of grass fields, but the better turf, Ohio State should have the best turf in the country. As you said, what's the money for? So like that's the conversation. Absolutely, I agree. Last thing is the Will Howard arm strength conversation. You and I talked about this a little bit when we were just chatting on Saturday. I feel like the Will Howard deep ball conversation has now sort of reached the point of the CJ Stroud needs to run more conversation, which I'm not saying it's wrong. I am saying I think it's overemphasized. And I think the hard part of it is, in both examples there, is you have a good quarterback who is good at a variety of other things, and it's just hard to be good at everything. So that's kind of where I am with Will Howard, and I do have stats we can talk about real quickly. But I was sort of saying, if there's 6 boxes you want to check for a quarterback, that is decision-making, accuracy, toughness, leadership, running ability, arm strength, and then like deep ball goodness. I'm not saying Will Howard's perfect in all the others, but I think he literally, the way he's played, there's been like a decision or two, but not consistently. I still think I'd say check. Would you give him a check mark for decision making?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. And so maybe you wouldn't for deep ball, but 7 out of 8, 6 out of 7, I get it. But I think we have to be realistic. Kyle McCord's throwing the deep ball great this year for Syracuse. Is that what you want? You got to ask yourself. And is it going to be the thing that holds Ohio State back? I think it's worth talking about, but I don't think it's a 5-alarm fire about that conversation yet. So I'll get to some text or things, but like, what's your overall view on this?
I don't think it's a 5-alarm fire either. I think maybe the fact that the misfires are pretty consistent in sort of how they're misfired, which is like he's just underthrowing guys. Is a little frustrating, right? It's like it'd be maybe I don't know. Would it be more comforting if like he was kind of like all over the board? Like sometimes he's too far, sometimes he's just off target, sometimes he's leaving it a little short. It's like it's pretty consistently just always leaving it short. Where Cardinal Tate play, a guy has to come back to the ball, then he gets hit and loses the ball, kind of thing. Right. And I think the other part of it that maybe is contributing to the level of alarm is Will Howard looks like a guy who should be able to throw the ball down the field. Like he's 6'5", he's a big old dude, and it's like, and he can really rip it on the intermediate throws over the middle of the field. And for whatever reason, when he's really got to launch that thing, like the mechanics change and the ball just does not jump off of his hand the same way. So it's a little weird to see. So I get it, but I also like, I would say maybe you have some of this too. Like statistically, he's fine. I don't know what you have, but I looked up like throws this season of 30 plus air yards on Sports Info Solutions.
Okay.
Guys that have double digit of those attempts. Will Howard has 12 of them.
Okay.
He's 50%. He's 6 for 12. there are 4 quarterbacks in the country who have a higher completion percentage
Yep.
than 50%. Like 50% is like where you want to be. So I don't know. I think it's okay. Like I'm not sitting here thinking like, man, Ohio State's really good. It's a shame they're not going to win a championship because Will Howard only completes 50% of his deep balls, right? Like I'm not.
Yeah.
That's not where I am. Yeah, I would love to see him connect on the one that Jeremiah Smith last week against Penn State, which funnily enough may have been the best one he's thrown all year, and Jeremiah Smith didn't run his route completely.
Yeah.
So like
Jeremiah Smith was like, I don't think Will can throw it this far.
Yeah. And then he uncorked one the way we've been all waiting for him to do this year. So I would like to see them get a little more consistent with it, I suppose, but I don't know that I view it as much of an issue as maybe we've given it the time for.
So I do think maybe this is wrong because my memory's terrible. I feel like this was a little bit of an issue with Todd Beckman maybe at one point, but one of the things for anybody is you'd rather be underthrowing than overthrowing. Because if you underthrow a guy, he still might catch it. If you overthrow a guy, he can't catch it. So now it does put it more at risk because maybe a defender can catch it too. But I think there's probably some of that baked in. I don't think this is always just like, well, Will can't get it there. I think there is something, maybe his deep ball accuracy is not his best trait. And then he's figuring like, well, if I'm going to err one way, I'll err toward let my guy go up and at least have a chance at it. So maybe there's a discussion to have about that. Maybe he's gone too far that way. Ethan asks, what's your level of concern with Will Howard's arm strength? Do you think it's still, you said like it doesn't jump off his hand maybe for how big he is. Do you think it is some component of just actual arm strength?
No, I think it's mechanics.
Okay.
I think he's got the way the ball jumps off of his hand on some of the intermediate stuff shows me he's got plenty of arm strength. I think his mechanics when he tries to throw, like his arm motion is entirely different when he's throwing the ball down the field. There's no like whip to it. He's just like pushing it down the field a lot of the times. At least that's my amateur view on it. So I don't know that that's. I think that is more mechanical than it is reflective of strength.
Ben, Will Howard made some of the most beautiful 25-yard throws I've ever seen. Just right on the money between coverages. Running game was vanilla, and I'm concerned that we can't get yards without Chip Kelly magic. But like that's what you're saying. Like those intermediate throws. Again, Justin Fields threw a really nice deep ball, but it took Justin at least like a year to evolve into those middle of the field throws where you're willing to kind of hit stuff in between coverages. It's just there are very few perfect quarterbacks. And so if this is the last thing for Will, but by the way, I think it's possible they don't beat Nebraska if he doesn't hit Jeremiah Smith on that deep ball.
Yeah, he threw two good ones in that game. I thought like the Cardinal Tate one, I guess, was like slightly underthrown, but what, like it got there. Like, but yeah, the one that Jeremiah was really good.
Our guy Drizzy, Will's deep ball will hold us back. Like I understand the conversation. I think we disagree on the will hold us back part of it. Again, doesn't mean it's not worth talking about. Jake, Will Howard's deep ball is the key to unleashing this offense. Coach has got to tell him to just throw it to the end zone when guys get up, and doesn't have to be perfect, but it can't be horribly underthrown like the one to Carnell. And then we've made this comparison, I think, Eric, is Will Howard just a slightly upgraded version of JT Barrett? Weak arms, slightly hesitant, accuracy problems, etc. Again, JT Barrett.
I don't think he has accuracy problems, and I don't think he has a weak arm.
So this is not a weenie arm conversation. Oh man, that was one of I asked the question that got the weenie arm answer. Oh my God. Weenie arm night.
I was looking that up the other day. Yeah.
Really?
I was just trying to remember what year it was. I couldn't remember if it was 2015 or after, but I think it was 2016. After like JT was firmly entrenched as a starting quarterback.
Yeah. And if you guys don't remember that, it was like there were questions about JT throwing the ball down the field, and we were asking about it. And he said, do I have what did he like? It's like, it's not like I have a weenie arm. Or I think I have a weenie arm or something like that. People think I have a weenie arm. So, hey, Will, some might say that you have a weenie arm. I don't think that's what it is. But to go back to the stats, I have PFF stats because you have the fancier stats than me. But power conference quarterbacks, throws of 20 yards or more, their overall grade on those plays in the power conferences They, with guys who have played at least 20% of their team snaps, there are 73 guys who are graded, Bill. Do you want to guess where Will Howard is in this grading system on deep balls out of 73?
Yeah, he's super high. He's like 5th or something, isn't he?
He's 6th.
Yeah.
DJ Lagway, the freshman at Florida, Kyle McCord, Curtis Rourke, Josh Hoover at TCU, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, 1 spot ahead of Cam Ward. Now, the number of attempts, Will Howard is not 6th. He is 52nd. So according to PFF, he has only attempted 25. For instance, in comparison, Jackson Dart at LSU, 64. No, Jackson Dart, 63. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, 63. Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, 64. Cam Ward at Miami, 60. Billy Edwards, Maryland, 59. Kyle McCord, Syracuse, 56. So Shadur Sanders, Colorado, 48. So they're not trying it as much. And I think that's part of the frustration when you have the receivers Ohio State has. Like, man, it'd be nice to see him try it. But PFF has him as 13 of 25 on deep balls. And there are some guys who throw it a lot more who are in the 30s. Brady Cook of Missouri is 8 of 34 on these deep balls. He's 23.5%, for example. So like if you're at 50, that's really good on these. Max Brosmer at Minnesota, who I think has been playing great, is at 33% on these. He's 13 of 39. Carson Beck at Georgia is 36%. He's 17 of 47. So that's part of this year. They don't try it as much, but when they do, it's not terrible. But here's the thing.
Even like Garrett Nussmeier is 64 attempts. He's only completed 21 of them.
Yeah. And I think some of the grading on Will Howard is how it looks. If he throws it a little underthrown and maybe it could have been a touchdown, but instead it's only a 38-yard completion, that goes down in the books as a completion and it's good for his rating. But I still think that's good for the offense. So it's not only a quarterback metric. It's a does the passing game complete that? And so Ohio State has the guys. You can think of this as Will Howard is not taking advantage of the Ohio State receivers as much as he could if he threw these better. Or you could think of it as the Ohio State receivers are picking up Will Howard in a part of the game that is not his strength. And then he is doing other things, whether it's running the ball in the red zone, whether it's ripping intermediate throws, whether it's being a guy who has come in as a one-year starter as a transfer and seems like a player that his teammates can believe in. You know, like the Penn State pick six was bad, but it's not like you're coming away from every game believing he's making horrible, horrible, horrible decisions. He was 21 of 26 against Purdue. So it just depends. We see it. We all see it. But maybe it's a little more, okay, this is the one thing where he struggles a little bit. So Jeremiah Smith is going to be an acrobat and Carnell Tate's going to be an acrobat, and they'll still be good enough at it for this offense to function.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sitting here trying to I'm not trying to say like you're wrong in what you think you're seeing or that you're wrong. Like, no, Will Howard's actually very good at throwing a deep ball, because it's not. It is the weakest part of his game, no doubt about it. I think like the context of the sport matters. How important is that actually? If you look at other teams Ohio State could be going up against, is that actually something that could hold them back? And maybe it is, but I don't necessarily view it that way. And I think I agree with you that I like that it's not a strength of his. I don't like that it's not a strength of his, but I like that knowing it's not a strength of his, he still takes those chances, and that his teammates oftentimes kind of pick him up for it. Like, I think that's like a good sign for the offense, I think, more than it is a negative. So I'm just not as alarmed about it. Maybe I should be. Maybe I'll look like a fool for not being alarmed about it by the end of the year. But I think a guy who is statistically like far better than average throwing the deep ball, I just like, it's hard for me to be like at a 5 out of 5 on the alarm about that. When like I wish it was more consistent, like everybody else does. It'd be really cool to watch Ohio State bomb the ball down the field every game on everyone. That's just not the kind of quarterback that Ohio State has this year, but he's good in a lot of other ways, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, and I think they would rather take, if they could have a downfield bomber who's no threat in the run game, or a guy who's a threat in the run game and struggles on the deep ball. I don't think there's any doubt what Ryan Day and Chip Kelly would take for this team this year. Is there?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, they could have. They could have Cam Ward.
They could have Cam
Yeah.
Ward.
Right.
So do you think they should have Cam Ward?
Do I? No, I do not think they should have Cam Ward. No.
So again, we're not telling people you're wrong. I think the context matters. And is it fairly high up on their list of weaknesses? Yes, because they are very good at a lot of different things right now. I don't know. Now that they have the offensive line straightened out and we're wrapping back to our peaking in November conversation, I don't know that this team has an Achilles heel right now. That is the thing that you are waiting for them to be tripped up by. That we'll look back and say, and again, if there is one, I guess it might be this, that if they play Indiana and Jeremiah Smith gets loose 4 times and Will Howard doesn't get the ball to him, any of them, and then you look back and that should have been three more touchdowns for Ohio State, and they're not. But you just have to also be strategic about this. And I would wonder, it makes me almost want to go back, Bill, and look at the deep shot misses. What down are they and were they drive stoppers? Because it's also one of those, if you're doing it strategically and you're missing on first down, but then on second down, you run for 7, and on third down, he completes like a really nicely thrown 8-yard pass to get a first down, then the miss didn't hurt you.
Right.
So like what? Is the housekeeping coming in?
Housekeeping trying to break in. I'm still in here.
Look at that. Yeah. This is what we do. Bill kind of really has to get out of the hotel and be nice to do. Like it was, not a lot really went wrong for Ohio State in that game. You want to keep it like 45 minutes? 80 minutes on everything's good. Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay. But like, you know what I mean? I almost like what did the misses cost them?
Yeah.
Might not be a bad investigation, right? So
there aren't that many to look into. So like there's that. That's like sheer volume of downfield passing. So it wouldn't be that difficult. Yeah.
And even the hits, even it's like, oh, if he would have thrown a better ball, the guy would have caught it in stride, and this would have been a touchdown. Instead, it was a completion, but not a touchdown. But then did they score on the drive still? Or were they stopped and it had to be held to a field goal? So that cost them 4 points. That might be worth. You want a 4th job this week?
We can dive into that. We can make that part of the Wednesday baseball show if we want to.
Do you have an assistant? Could you get your assistant to do that? You don't have an assistant, do you, who looks up stuff for you?
I don't. No, I don't. I wish I did.
Well, that's too bad. You should get one of those. All right. We'll let Landis get back to his family and leave Bloomington, Indiana. We'll be back on Wednesday for our usual midweek Kings of Columbus, where I do think we'll have a little fun. I did overhear our guy Steve Hellwagon asking Jack Sawyer whether he played baseball, getting anticipatory about this Ohio State game at Wrigley Field. And Jack Sawyer said his grandpa played for the Pirates or something. I don't know. Or in the Pirate system. Now I was like hearing it out of my third ear as Will Howard was at the podium. So I might have gotten that wrong. But it's like people are thinking ball. So we'll talk some real football. We'll have some fun with baseball lineups on Wednesday. You and Austin and Berm will keep the flow going on the podcast during the week. And of course, Monday through Thursday live at YouTube on our other channel, Kings of the North. A bunch of stuff to talk about because it was a crazy weekend of college football. And for instance, the BYU Utah game ended at like 2:00 in the morning Eastern after we finished our show. And that was a game that I was going to go to if it had not been such a late kickoff. And now I'm like, I cannot believe I wasn't there.
I was wondering. Yeah, that was pretty wild.
It was like the greatest game in the history of college. It was like the greatest college football game since like 2006 Ohio State, Michigan or something. It's like, okay, well, or like, I don't know, like, whatever, regular season game. So like maybe the greatest in the 100-year plus of the Holy War. And I could have been at it. But anyway, thanks to you guys for being here. Without you, we're just two guys screaming into a microphone. Thanks to our producer, Mike Yurstowski, for helping us out with everything that we do. And thanks to Bill Landis. I'm going to call him 4 Jobs Landis. 4 Jobs Landis, getting it done for all of the college football universe. Thanks again for now. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Sunday Sound Off on Kings of Columbus.